Why You Were Born by Jerry Downs. Read by Jerry Downs. Copyright 2014. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. C.S. Lewis. This book is dedicated to my son, Christopher, whose vision helped me remember me. About the author. Jerry Downs is an artist, photographer, and writer who lives 10 miles north of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Rafael, California. His work has appeared throughout the world in books, magazines, and museums. He was born the fifth of 11 children, had a horrible time in school, and spent most of his life living hand to mouth trying to make a living and making sense of why he was born. Eventually, he stopped trying so hard. Everything that has happened in his life has helped him understand that life is a creative act and joy is the only measure of success. He's happy to be alive and enormously appreciative that anything exists at all. Introduction. The Blood Oath. Pages 8 through 11. From without, no wonderful effect is wrought within ourselves unless some interior, responding wonder meets it. Herman Melville. When I was 5 years old, I made a promise. It was no pinky swear promise. It was a blood oath. After locking myself in the bathroom, I climbed on the sink, opened the door of the mirrored medicine cabinet, and pulled out my father's Gillette double-edged razor. Gripping the top of the handle with one hand, I twisted the bottom of the handle to release the jaws that held the thin blue blade in place. I stopped when I realized I hadn't thought the whole thing through. I rewound the jaws of the razor, placed it next to the hot water knob, and climbed down off the sink. Once I was on solid linoleum, I renewed the ritual from scratch. Once the blade was free, I placed it between my thumb and forefinger of my right hand. Then, without giving it a second thought, I sliced the full length of my fingerprint across the forefinger of my left hand. I had to think through the second part. Being right-handed, it was harder to hold the blade in my left hand, and even harder since I no longer had use of my bleeding finger. But I managed. My resolve was larger than anything that could ever get in my way. Once the blade was held firmly between my thumb and the rest of my small fingers, I made an identical cut in my right forefinger. They were clean cuts with very little pain. This just wouldn't do. I placed the thumbs of both hands on the tip of each bleeding finger and opened and closed the cuts until I could feel myself start to cry. I just had to remember this. I couldn't forget. It was just too important. Then it was time for the oath. I pressed my two forefingers together and pointed them to the sky and gripped the rest of my fingers together like you do when you pray. For a moment, I let the blood from one hand bleed into the other. After I finished counting to 60, I began to speak. To myself, to the entire universe, I made this promise. I, Jerry Downs. Then I stopped. To make it more official, I used my full given name. I, Gerard Vincent Downs, promise with all my heart, promise to find a way, when I grow up, to tell adults what they forgot about being a kid. I promise to find a way to remind them of why they were born. Then, with my hands and my two fingers still locked together, with my thumbs I crossed my heart and added, cross my heart and hope to die. I felt better, knowing that my future self would help me. The helplessness subsided. There was still a lot of pain. I knew that I would still have to watch people I loved, and I knew loved me, leave from that state of unified peace and pleasure and disappear into something that wasn't altogether human. You could watch it happen, that moment when they began to lose themselves. Their eyes changed. They smelled different. They lost touch with the surface of their body, and they retreated to somewhere inside or outside of themselves. It was hard to tell which it was. Both conditions could have explained the distance they had gone away. I wasn't mad at them. It was just so sad. They knew a lot more than I did, but they had forgotten so much more. They forgot why they were even born. I tried to tell them. We all did. "Look, Mommy, look," we yelled, and we pointed to the blueness of the sky or the way light passed through a window. We took their hand and held it to our hearts and asked them to listen so that they, too, could feel how incredible it was to be alive. We tried to tell them a million gazillion times in a bazillion trillion ways. They tried. They really did. Every once in a while, we could see them light up again. But they so rarely used the muscles required that they just couldn't hold it for very long. They just forgot. I forgot too. I knew I had to forget so that I could go through what they went through so I could write this book. I had to learn to speak their language and understand the how and the why. How someone could let this happen to themselves, and why, in such a perfect world, was it necessary to forget? I forgot. I forgot so thoroughly I came to believe that there was actually some mechanism designed to keep me from getting my hopes, dreams, and desires. We all have our own horror stories. In this book, I will share a few of my own. Though there were times when I wanted to end it all, I can tell you, with all sincerity, that I would do it all again, just so I could be sitting here typing this page. I came to see that the same mechanism that gave rise to the nightmares was also the mechanism that delivered the dreams. I could tell you why you were born right now. The answer is really rather simple. Any 2-year-old could tell you. Well, maybe not in so many words. I've asked the question to a number of little kids, and they usually react in one of two ways. They look at me with a look that says, "Why are you asking such a silly, self-evident question?" Or they do a little dance, spin around, run around the room, and joyfully look back at me to see if their demonstration answered my question. I could also tell you how great ice cream tastes, but words wouldn't come close to giving you the actual experience. This book was written, the pictures were chosen, to give you a taste of what it's like to remember, and how important it was to forget. I can tell you one thing. Once you begin to remember, you will lick the spoon clean and ask for more. My only wish is that, by the time you finish this book, you will rip the spoon from my hand, feed yourself, and do a little dance of your own. Still, you may be asking yourself some of the same questions that I ask myself. Just who do you think you are? Isn't it a bit presumptuous, preposterous, and pompous to title a book Why You Were Born? I've asked the first question every day of my life. It wasn't until I started showing people the first draft of this book that the second question even occurred to me. The title came out of the same thin air, in the same voice, as everything else in the book. I forgot that it was such a big deal, which is kind of funny. First I forgot what I knew as a child, then I remembered, and then I forgot. The reason I can title this book Why You Were Born is simply because I remember, and because I have every confidence that you can remember too. I won't give you some magic number of steps to follow. I won't tell you what to do. I hated that when I was a kid, and I still don't like it. There's not one universal way to discover why you were born. There's only one way, the way you invent yourself. If you don't do it your way, it won't be yours. This book is not designed to tell you a magic formula. It's designed to foster a feeling that will help you get in touch with the answer, yourself. You can do it. It is, in the truest sense, the most natural thing in the world. When you remember, it won't be just because it makes sense to your brain. When you remember, you will feel it with all your senses. It will be alive in every touch, taste, smell, and sound. Everything you see will be proof that you, yourself, know. You will be part of it all, and you will own it. It will be yours. It won't feel presumptuous, preposterous, or pompous. It won't feel foreign. It will feel natural, familiar. It will feel like home. This is my story. It's about how I, personally, got lost and how I found my way home. I found my way back by remembering what it felt like to be a child. You don't have to remember your childhood to remember why you were born. It was just the path I took. My own revelation came by a very circuitous and often painful route. Fortunately, there were moments of extreme beauty that inspired me to keep taking the next step. Along the way, I took pictures, made drawings, and assembled massive paper collages to record the past I have pondered. When I began writing this book, it had nothing to do with my childhood, keeping my promise to my 5-year-old self, or asking why I was born. As I looked through all my pictures, I saw that they each, in their own way, were a kind of self-portrait. It became clear that different selves who took the pictures or made the works of art were looking for something. They were looking for me, myself. When I asked myself when I felt most like myself, the answer was clear and immediate. It was when I was a child. I remember being full of wonder and how perfectly wonderful it felt. You will feel your own way. Life is a work of art. And as that Picasso guy once said, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. So let it rip. I invite you to tear this book apart. Keep what is important to you, save what you think you might need for later, and throw away the rest. Reassemble the pieces in a way that pleases you. This book is yours. For whatever reason, by whatever route you found yourself here, thank you for that. Thank you for coming to play. Let your own spirit move you. Life doesn't move along a straight and narrow path, and neither will this narrative. Every image, every memory, each page is simply another expression of a time when I, personally, faced the music, took note of what rang true, discarded the dissonance, found the beat, and found myself celebrating the fact that I was born. When I was 5 years old, I couldn't believe that adults could forget something so intimate, so precious. When I made my blood oath, I knew I would forget. I did. And I knew I would remember. I did. What I remembered is not unique to me. We are all in this together. It's the reason we were all born. All the answers reside within you. Listen,